Welcome back to the technical stage. Please do come take your seats ready for our next session. I'm going to be handing over to Sam Wilkinson, who's going to be in conversation with Lyle Cresswell, and they're going to be discussing 25 years of innovation within road freight transport. So please, gentlemen, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. The year is 2025. AI seems to be taking over, and quantum computing is in the headlines, redefining truly what is possible. And that's really why I'm delighted to be here with you today. My name is Sam Wilkinson. I'm CRO of TEG and Trusted. I'm joined with our founder and CEO, Lyle Cresswell, this afternoon. We're going to be talking through 25 years of innovation. We're going to be talking through some of the challenges and opportunities for operators in the market today, and perhaps some of the things that we think are relevant coming forward in the coming years. It's a lot to cover in 30 minutes, so we'll do our best. So without further ado, Lyle, thanks for joining this afternoon. For those who aren't familiar, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Lyle Cresswell. I've founded two businesses in the freight tech space. The first of those is a 25-year-old business, which is Transport Exchange Group, which we call TEG. Our customers are all operators within the transport and logistics space and the wider supply chain, ranging from household names that you would see driving up and down the roads of England and also with Europe every day, through the broad range of middle-sized, smaller, independent courier transport and freight logistics businesses. We have around about 9,000 businesses operating on the platform now. And our raison d'etre is to make those businesses more profitable, to help them scale and grow, meet the challenges of today's industry and today's economy, which are many, as we know. And they use our business really to share capacity, freight with one another. And we also support the whole of the order execution workflow from digital freight matching, as we call it, through to all the milestones involved in any transport order, billing, and also just recently, and we'll come on to this in a little bit, payments as well. So we're trying to break down those silos within the industry and innovate at the same time.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lyle. 25 years in business is really a remarkable achievement. Would you mind talking us through some of the milestones for TEG over those years?
Yeah, 25 years. It's a long time. Actually, I see that the CV show has also been 25 years
Awesome.
as of this year, so we share an anniversary with them. Some milestones, if I think about it, let's go back, I guess, to probably 2003, 2004. We had seen that the first consumer devices, which a business could go into a phone shop, were just about hitting the market. For those of you with a longer memory, you might remember the XDA.
Yep.
It was a mobile device, no GPS, by the way.
Sure.
But it would do many of the functions that you'd recognize in today's iOS and Android handsets. So we said, look, this is an opportunity to enable better flows of information between the office, between dispatch offices, between planners and drivers, carriers and drivers out on the road. So we built what we didn't actually call it an app.
There was a twist there, right?
Well, there was, yes, because actually the App Store, as we all know it and are very familiar with today, actually didn't come into existence until, I think,
2008.
2008.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but we built this application. It did some pretty amazing things at the time. Push notifications, handle orders on the device. The drivers could actually capture a signature on glass, proof of delivery, and it worked pretty well. We got up to about 1,000 drivers using that at any one time. Before then, the introduction of the iPhone and then Android came in a little bit later. So I think that was really stand out because it showed for the first time that we were bringing some very, very kind of cutting edge tech to those businesses and to the industry as a whole. What else was there over 25 years? There's a lot of things. I guess if I come forwards now to 2020, we started building a separate platform to TEG, which we call Trusted, and that handles the verification and compliance for the businesses in our industry, really ranging from the organizations, the carriers, the hauliers, the courier businesses, the 3PLs, all the way through down to the individual driver level. And that has some technology in it which you would probably be familiar with from looking at banking apps now. And that really has revolutionized the way that we can understand, onboard and also manage the businesses on TEG. 25 years. Look, I'll tell you what, okay, so last but not least by any means, last year for the very first time, about 6-7 months ago, we finally got payments passing through the platform, facilitated by the platform. And that was really quite a moment in time for us. We'd wanted to do that for really since we started. I've got the original scopes for those that I wrote back in 2003, 2004, but fintech didn't exist.
Yep.
You couldn't facilitate this kind of activity. And there's also a lot of regulatory aspects to facilitating payments. But we now have achieved that milestone, and that's, for me, was really a standout moment.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lyle. The XDA story is one of my favorites. We've actually got one framed back in the office in London, and building a mobile app before there was an app store and posting the SD cards out to you.
Yeah, that's right. So if any of you remember, or maybe you don't remember, but there was no over-the-air updating. So do you remember, you like a camera, like an SD card. So we actually had to download them and post them out, and then drivers would actually install that.
It's amazing.
We're in a different world now.
And I think it really showcases what's in the DNA of TEG and Trust, that is this truly innovative technology based approach. Over the last 25 years, Lyle, of course, TEG's been on a journey in terms of the product and the software, but the industry's been on a journey as well. I know you've been obviously watching things very closely over the time. Could you share some of the key milestones that have stood out for you in terms of the industry over the last 25 years as well?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the biggest one is obvious, but let's talk about it, is digitalization. Strange enough, I mean, in our industry, as you know, there is still paper. There is still too much paper. We need to try and drive that out of the workflow wherever possible. It's inefficient. It slows down the order to cash cycle. It will disappear, but it's, in some areas it's obviously proving very stubborn to pull that out. And TEG as a platform has always been very keen to remove those friction points wherever possible. I guess one of the other real standout moments, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, has been the rise of the on-demand economies, as we call it, and that expectation, led by consumer, but very much now part and parcel of B2B, which is where we operate, has driven a change in behavior, has driven a change in expectation, and therefore our industry has to respond and has to become agile and responsive to that. So on demand, I would say, has been something that we have had to be particularly aware of. One of the other things which actually I find very, very pleasing over the past few years has been the recognition of transport and logistics and the wider supply chain and the importance in the economy and in our world. I think it's fair to say that if I go back to when, the early days of TEG, there was very little awareness outside of the industry of the role that the businesses, operators and people play in actually, putting product on shelves, fulfilling all of this supply chain. And supply chains have obviously got much more complex in the last 20, 30 years, especially with globalization. In the UK, I think that there is and has been a growing awareness of the professional nature of much of the industry. Certainly there are more university courses. There is much more consideration of transport logistics and the wider supply chain. And if you look around the CV show, you can see that tech is becoming much more a part and parcel of the ecosystem.
Absolutely. You started with digitalization there, and it's something, of course, that's very close to our heart at TEG, being an end-to-end logistics tech platform. And really, it's constantly surprising for me in an age of such brilliant technology and advancements, organizations are still operating in a very siloed environment. So processes, teams, technologies and systems are all still separate from one another in many cases. And that ultimately slows things down, creates bottlenecks, and makes things more expensive and difficult to run. I know that you and I were talking recently about some examples where there's been some real success stories around digitalization. There was a particular example you had around an adjacent industry.
Oh, so you're referring to the air freight industry?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody at the CV show maybe is not that aware of the complexity of the air freight industry, but the digitalization of air freight, especially around the airway bill, which historically has always been a piece of paper, which had to travel literally with the freight, has been pretty successful. And my background actually is also in the wider freight industry, both air and ocean. And I'd always tried to kind of see how road freight compared to those other modes. So the airlines and the air freight industry has actually successfully adopted electronic airway bills. Strange enough, actually, talking to people in the business, they don't always end up as a digital artifact.
Sure.
So
they start as
they start. You might create an electronic airway bill here, but actually when it gets to destination, it might be turned into a printed document. But at least it is for the large part digital. There is a similar momentum now with bills of lading, but I think it's much further back in the evolution and the acceptance of that. So talking specifically about road freight, many people obviously in our industry have to create and handle CMRs, and the eCMR, the electronic CMR, has now, as in the last couple of years, has been ratified by all of the EU member states. I think we're still at the beginning of a very, very long journey because you're talking about a very fragmented industry, literally hundreds of thousands of operators and obviously millions of shippers need to understand how that benefits them. But it'll come.
Absolutely. I think it's good that we have a really strong example of where digital airway bills have been successful. And that's a key role for TEG to play in this industry. And what is, as you mentioned, a very fragmented industry, particularly as we go down through the supply chain. Having a common operating platform that ties those areas together and joins the dots is absolutely key and a big part of the value that TEG add to the industry. You mentioned the shift in terms of just in time, the on-demand economy. We're talking about 25 years, but even in the last 6-7 years, we've had the fallouts of COVID. We've had cost of living crises. We've had Suez Canal being blocked with Evergreen. We're now in the middle of a tariff scenario which is upending global trade. We were talking the other day about the need for operators to be agile and responsive in this space. What are your thoughts on that, Lara?
So that was one of the reasons, and that was one of the key characteristics of TEG as a platform.
Yeah.
It was about making and about enabling operators to be more agile. So here in the UK, we have a very, very strong contract logistics business industry, I should say. There is obviously a marketplace. There is Spot, which kind of fills in the gaps when the plan doesn't go right, or increasingly it's starting to merge a little bit with the contract market as well. We pay very close attention to the North American market, which is similar but dissimilar in that way. But enabling operators to be agile and also able to unlock what we call, especially from an environmental and a sustainable angle, unlock latent capacity is critical. And that's one of the underlying themes within TEG and on our mission over the past 25 years.
Absolutely. And I think scale is something you mentioned there, and being able to flex up and down. We were just going through some of the numbers the other day around the TEG index that we run on a monthly basis. And this year, Easter came much later, needing to respond to those changes in demands. Gone are the days of, very clear and simple and repeatable cycles. The requirements come in fast, and it's up to operators to fulfill them and grow their business and be in close partnership with their customers, which is a big part of the area.
Yes, and agility. I mean, you've mentioned whatever it was, 3 or 4, major events.
Yeah.
And what they do is they just create this immense bullwhip effect, as we all see. And operators then are under intense pressure to perform, to catch up.
Yes.
And you can't do that by yourself necessarily.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the spot market as well. This is a key area where we've seen a real shift, particularly in the last couple of years, the need to be more agile. Dealing with the same 3, 4, 5, 10 suppliers simply isn't cutting it anymore. Operators need flexibility. They need options around sustainability, price, time, service, quality, all of these things. So the pillars that we run at TEG, from carrier onboarding through to audit, through to sourcing, execution, payments and finance, having that end-to-end system is something that we see now more and more 3PLs and large operators engaging with us on a regular basis. Just before we move on from this bit, Lyle, something that I know is very close to your heart is the recognition for the industry. You talked about logistics really getting the recognition it needs nowadays, the rise of the supply chain role in the organizations and the fact that now it's becoming front and center for a lot of organizations.
Yes, and that's really pleasing. I'm so happy to see that. So interesting enough, I'd always looked, if I go back 20 plus years ago, at the industry in Germany, which had a long history of academic approach to transport logistics and supply chain. And as I say, we have certainly seen a growth of that in the UK over the past decade. And that's pleasing. Interesting enough, we're just talking to one of the ports. Has a big, and one of the universities, Teesside, has a very substantial initiative underway at the moment to try and look at digitalization of all the different aspects of their particular area of freight and transport. So you can see that there is a focus on this now.
Absolutely. And being in focus is a good thing, but it also comes with its challenges. It means that logistics and supply chain is front and center for the big brands, the big customers, the blue chip organizations who are there. Operators need to up their game, and it's a great opportunity for them to do so. Change has been a theme, Lyle, throughout this conversation. We've talked about various events, about the TEG business. If we think now about some of the changes that may be coming ahead into the future, what do you think are the key things that operators and the industry should be watching in the short term?
Right, change, my gosh. I mean, there's a lot of change. It goes without saying. So the obvious one is what fuel type?
Yeah.
What vehicles are we going to be running? I mean, you look around here, there's some fantastic EVs, mostly at the van level, I see.
Sure.
There are obviously LGVs with alternative fuels and with EVs. Who knows what the future holds? What's another one? Automation. So automation in the warehouse has been around for a long time. There's an increasing amount of robotics, both in warehousing, distribution, and obviously manufacturing. You can, by the way, over-automate. There are some good examples where automation has proven to be less successful than humans, but automation in the warehouse, now automation on the road, autonomous driving. We'll see where we get to with that. There's been billions of dollars and pounds and effort spent on that. Still, watch this space. Let's see, how long the reality takes to come onto the roads in everyday terms. And I guess the biggest element in the room, if you want to call it that, which is still, so mysterious in many, many ways, is AI. So AI is certainly becoming a fact, and it is certainly becoming a feature of not just transport logistics, but the wider business, and certainly as consumers. At TEG, what we're doing is we're looking at a number of different areas in the platform and in our business where we can actually sensibly deploy AI. We're not looking to disrupt in any way or sense. We're actually looking to improve the workflow. One of the obvious ones, for example, is in automation of document inspection, where we see that AI, an AI agent with that technology can actually inspect, verify, and also approve documents better than, or as well as, if not better than, the human eye. So there's lots of different areas where I think that's going to have an impact, and we're just at the very beginning. We're in a bit of a hype cycle, obviously, at this moment in time. It reminds me of blockchain. Sure, if you all remember that from 5, 6, 7 years ago, everything was going to be blockchain. AI, I think, is different.
Yeah.
Who knows quite where it's going to take us and land, but that certainly is. It's not a fad. It's very real, and it's here to stay.
I think that's really, really well put. I think AI is clearly a disruptive force in the industry. There was a great analogy I heard recently that AI is like a calculator. That having a calculator doesn't make you automatically a mathematical genius, but it gives you potential to be faster and better. I think that's a great way of looking at things. You and I were recently in Las Vegas at a conference over there, a supply chain conference, and we had the pleasure of listening to a chat with the SVP at Unilever for ice cream.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And they had a great use case around AI where they'd implemented it into their demand forecasting and planning of inventory. So they were using weather data, they were using purchasing data to look at, well, where actually should I put my inventory and my stocks to make sure I maximize sales? And they had some really clear, tangible outcomes around better margin and better revenue and lower cost in terms of being really smart about where they deployed ice cream. Just a really simple example of something that is a brilliant use case of this technology. I think that for all operators, AI is here, and we read about it on LinkedIn, we read about it online. There really is no excuse, and we need to be embracing this technology into our business.
I think use cases like that were great because they were just so transparent and had such an obvious business win.
Yes,
and that's the kind of thing that we need more of.
Absolutely. So Lyle, that is our whistle-stop tour through 25 years. Thank you very much. We've got a few minutes for questions, if there is anything from the audience at all.
Does anyone have any questions? Wonderful.
Hi. So yeah, you've obviously delivered a huge amount of change during your time in the business, and I guess my question is around change specifically. So how do you kind of successfully deliver change that sustains and is enduring, particularly in a climate today when you're coping with event after event after event? Does that make sense? So it's a combination of dealing with today whilst driving kind of long-term change.
So do you mean change in our platforms or in the business?
Both, because I guess your platform delivers change in the business.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
So what I found over the time is that some change is easier, obviously, than other. And certain changes, so especially where you're making a not just an iterative change, but something very, very impactful, for example, to the user interface, we now put a huge amount of effort into testing. Because I found that, I mean, if you do that, even if what your next generation user interface is significantly better, people obviously get used to what they're working with. And so we put a huge amount of effort in. I mean, literally, maybe even years. I can think of one example of that where we're doing that at the moment. Other areas of change where fundamentally we know that it's going to be beneficial to our users, and also enough of our users and customers also say, yes, we want to do this, we need to do this. You've got to be a little bit more forceful, because otherwise that change will never happen, especially in a platform where I need everybody to be on the same level. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So there are differences in approach, and I think it's, anybody that's been involved in large-scale transformation projects, especially digital, the amount of effort that you put into planning and executing the transformation is as significant as actually the build. It's a huge part of it. And anybody that says, oh, you can just do this and, you can build something in 8 months and we'll implement it in, over the next quarter, I think they're really missing something. And you'll end up with dissatisfaction. So yeah, it has to be so planned. I have, as I say, we've got examples of both of those. Thank you for the question.
Any more questions? In that case, I have a question. It's kind of a two-part question. So over, the 25 years that you've just spoken about, you talked about a lot of different technology that's made significant change within the industry. But has there been one specific technology that has really excited you, either to work on it or because you now look back on it fondly? And then also, similar question, but what about in the future? What's exciting you there?
It's really difficult to get down to one. Really, really difficult. So sometimes it's not just one specific technology. It can actually be a marriage of different tech, which then creates a product. So I talked about facilitating payments through our platform. And that sounds really easy and it sounds so commonplace. But I should explain that, first of all, we're in B2B. So we're dealing with businesses. Businesses have ways and means of doing things, which they, in many cases, have been doing for years, decades, such like. So doing something better that actually is more efficient and saves time, money, all the good things for a business, you've got to really show that it works and it delivers. And even then, there are, you're aware of the what's the graph that we always look at?
Change curve, yeah.
Yeah, the change curve and crossing the chasm, and it's a very well understood. And we've seen exactly that with certain initiatives. But fundamentally, something like introducing payments into our platform is a game changer, because what TEG does is it says, look, there is a large industry out there. We service businesses that are all types of different activities, size, complexity, experience, ambition, fleets. And we're saying, look, on this platform, you can do business better at the end of the day. We can unlock all of that potential you have in your business. So if you had to go off, which until last year, in order for my business to pay your business, we would have to go off platform. So you can see the ability for me to actually stay in the platform, not have to go and onboard you as a supplier, not have to worry about all of those compliance items in the checklist, your VAT registration, your business, your this, your that, your insurances, etc., your banking information. So that's actually facilitated by Trusted, and that's the guardian for all of that, and then facilitating the payments which take place in TEG. So it's not one specific technology, but it's a marriage which creates a product.
Brilliant, thank you. And is there like one thing in the future you're super excited about personally? Or is it a similar thing of like how it all comes together?
So one of the products that we're still building, but we're also starting to test now with our member businesses, is digital identity. And that again it's a very cutting edge area, both in tech terms, but also in implementation. So with Trusted, we became accredited to the government's trust framework a couple of months ago, which was a big milestone there. And what we're looking to do is prove who's carrying my freight at all times and create a very secure chain of custody. And it doesn't really matter who the carrier is, who the driver is, or indeed who the shipper or the 3PL is. Everybody in the platform can have trust and confidence that their freight is in safe hands, and all the while maintaining the privacy of who those carriers and drivers are. That's super important to us. So again, that's quite cutting edge. Biometric authentication is part of that. You're seeing that now in your banking apps, and that tech is evolving all the time. So that's something that we're working on and I'm pretty excited about.
Fantastic. So there is time for one more question if that's inspired anyone. No? Okay, then please put your hands together for Lyle and Sam. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.